funds. And I think the piece that you, I think very wisely requested an entity separate from the agency, the treasurer's office, to undertake what's called a cost assessment of essentially climate change. We'll just say that, and I can get into deeper language if needed. And that is the piece that the agency, in coordination with the treasurer's office, determined early on would take more time and resources. And that is why the bill was amended. And that is frankly why I was hired to essentially project manage this project for the treasurer. It's a limited service position. I'm really thrilled to be doing it. And I think, just to reinforce the work, becoming a part of the Shumlin administration in 2010 and very soon thereafter being faced with the historic flooding of 2011, all of you remember it, but I lived it. And then in 2023 and 2024, I was working for Scott's former employer, Capstone Community Act. And
boss, actually.
and not only in that job did I become deeply aware of the breadth and depth of poverty and the various circumstances, but certainly the extra burden that people of low income, our most vulnerable citizens endure because of the impacts of our changing climate. So all of that has led me to this moment of being able to really feel like, okay, what are we going to do about this? And I have asked Marion, and I'll introduce her in a minute, to come, because another really, really, really important element that you set forth in the Superfund law was to establish a cost recovery fund and to develop a strategy for the use of those funds that would focus on adaptation.
Mm-hmm.
Now, because the cost assessment project piece of the program got extended for more time, the wisdom of the administration and the treasurer was to move forward, advance this project, which became the resilient implementation strategy. And that's really what we're going to spend most of our time talking about. And I just want to say, as much as we are thinking about mitigation, as much as we are thinking about what all can we do to address our carbon footprint, we really need to be thinking about how do we prepare. When I was honored to be serving as the Irene Recovery Officer and then got redeployed to be Secretary of Transportation, this was a very big issue that the Obama administration took on, and I was very honored to serve in the White House Task Force on Climate Preparedness and Resilience, at which time, and we're talking 2013, a long time ago now, this was the first time I think many people from around the country were able to actually talk about climate change, use those words, but also really recognize the need for strategies to adapt. So I'm honored. I came into the treasurer's office right at the tail end of this. And I do want to say, the cost assessment is underway.
Mm-hmm.
It is very early in the process. And we have hired an awesome consulting team, Industrial Economics Inc. out of Cambridge. We're in touch with them. I am in touch with them regularly. But I think you probably are aware that your Climate Superfund is the subject of active litigation. And that is the reason I'm not going to take questions about the cost assessment. I'm really not going to delve into it. But it is moving. And again, we're really at the kind of initial phases. Your law supposes that we're going to be establishing a fund and being able to take on some of these projects, but we are not supposing anything at this time. Too early, or presupposing anything. But we will, by the time you requested January of 2027, so at the opening of your next session, we will be ready with a report on that piece. Meanwhile, I want to turn to Marion, who I did meet when I was on the Climate Council. And she is really the resilience lead in the Climate Action Office, which I'm so psyched that we have in this state. It's so important, and to have a whole person with her caliber of technical expertise and tenacity. It's great to have Marion. She previously was also at VEM, Vermont Emergency Management. So this is a topic she really knows from the FEMA world and from the boots on the ground up. So I hope you'll enjoy this presentation of the state's climate implementation strategy, which was very much a led with the Treasurer's Office and the Climate Action Office. All right, great. Thanks, Sue.
I think I'm trying to share my screen. I've been kicked out of the Zoom room a few times. Technology. I know. Let me stop and try and reshare again. So would love to share some slides with you all. Makes it a little bit more engaging.
You want to send it to
I could send it. I could just send it to you. If that's easier.
Yeah, it might be. I'm not sure why it's doing that.
Yeah.
I'll ask a question in the meantime.
Perfect.
So if folks wanted to track what's happening with the litigation for the Climate Superfund, where would you send people to get?
To the Attorney General's office.
Okay.
And yes, it's quite active. And it's very interesting to read the briefs going back and forth.
And we're being sued by whom?
The Department of Justice,
Ah,
the fossil fuel industry,
yeah,
That's
the US Chamber of Commerce, and 28 attorneys general.
oh, wow.
Prestigious group.
Yeah.
There was.
24, excuse me, 24, I said 20.
24 other attorney generals, but are there other attorneys generals
Yeah.
that are on board?
So so that's what I can report to you. And so I think each entity, some are joining and some are on their own. I can't really get into any, I don't know enough to know how to answer that question.
Oh, Phil has a question and then Scott.
Hi,
So in January 2027,
yes.
will the research being done be done? Will they say, here's what the cost is?
Correct.
Here's
So-
what we're buying it to.
That's right. And then it's really in the hands of the Agency of Natural Resources who have to undertake rulemaking. And there's complex pieces to that I can't speak appropriately to, but it's outlined in the law. And then eventually, I believe that takes yet another year, 2028. And then assuming that we have the evidence and the rulemaking, there would then be a cost demand letter to the so-called responsible party, all of which will be identified by AIM. I'm sorry, I'm pointing to you, but that was
Yeah.
but yeah, so this is like phase one. And we're not even at the, and then there will be another year.
Scott, you had a question?
I'll hold my question.
Okay.
Let's go on with Marius.
Oh,
It's being slow. But
Oh, no.
I started and can send this to you, Jordan, once it finishes.
oh, technology.
I-
Yeah, so tell us about
Well, I
the,
think, yeah, happy to start. It might just be my internet. So apologies, folks. But we'll
You're having-
share it once I can. For some folks, you may be hearing this similar presentation that I gave last week. to different
Yes.
topics. So
Very good.
okay, well, glad, I hope you thought about it, maybe have more questions, I'm happy to share this. But appreciate the invitation today, to talk about the resilience implementation strategy, work that was undertaken, with our office, with the Treasurer's Office, and partnership across state government to really look at work state government is currently doing to adapt to the impacts of climate change, assess where there might be gaps and opportunities to enhance that work across our myriad programs, funding opportunities, technical assistance, training resources, and really develop a prioritized list of actions that we can look to move forward that really focuses on how state government helps Vermont become more resilient to the impacts of climate change. This resilience implementation strategy was a joint initiative announced by the governor and the treasurer in early 2024, following the 2023 flooding, really acknowledging that the state has done a lot of work to enhance our resilience to flooding and other climate impacts following Tropical Storm Irene, a lot of work undertaken by this body and Sue and other partners as well, but that we continue to see the impacts of climate change and need to really assess what actions we can take and are really within kind of the bounds of state government's work and really building off of the good work that's already happening. So the intent with the resilience implementation strategy was to really dive into state government programs to look at where are there gaps and opportunities to kind of build climate resilience into our policies and programs, to assess those, come up with a prioritized list of actions, and then to also look at estimating implementation costs associated with those actions to give us a framing to start to think about resilience needs, how we can prioritize investments, and then also consider how we might fund implementation moving forward. Sorry, filed the mouth patch.
Oh.
So I'm gonna just, while you're doing that, say, you know, in 2010, we were so completely unprepared.
Mhm.
And I think we learned a lot. And in my research, so in addition to hiring the consultants, I'm reaching out to all of the agencies to talk about the sort of known fiscal costs and what strategies have we deployed that have been helpful. And because I'm relatively familiar with transportation and those on the committees of transportation, understand how our state really advanced huge national conversation on upsizing culverts and bridges and our design standards for those. And we really have seen and observed, it's not been totally documented, working towards that, how those resilience levels really good. I mean, if you look at the town of Brandon, just as one example, a huge investment in a redesigned bridge meant that the entire downtown wasn't even affected. What we don't know is documentation of the downscaling of the rain in 2023 and 2024. But when 200 state bridges were shut down and over 600 miles of road destroyed in 2011, that was completely not replicated in 2024. Unfortunately, of course, cities of Barre and Montpelier were devastated. And we're talking about what happens next there as well. I just wanted to say it's a lot of progress has been made, but the fact that we are invested in thinking about this, to me, is really hopeful.
Yeah. Jordan, I did send you the book too.
Oh, yeah, right now.
Okay, perfect. Well, so I think, you know, Sue frames up, and I think we all as a state think a lot about flooding. Flooding is sort of the most costly natural disaster we feel in this community, our infrastructure, our communities, our economic systems. But we also, over the last year, have been feeling a lot the impacts of drought, right? It's been impacting our agricultural sector. It's been impacting the waterways we rely on for ag, for recreation. We, over the last couple of years, have been feeling the impact of bad air quality days due to wildfire smoke from Canada. Once I get the slides up, there's a Burlington air quality camera, and you can kind of see over 4 days over the last couple of years, really the stark difference from waves of smoke we were seeing from Canada. And then, of course, we've been seeing an increase in wildfire occurrence as well. And that's been stressing our local response capabilities, been stressing our state response capabilities. And while, you know, we are lucky and not having to see wildfires really impact our built environment, I think that's something we're starting to look towards in the future as we see, you know, longer periods of drought, longer periods of high heat, and the impacts of wildfire as well. And then, of course, flooding, as I said, impacting our downtowns and our communities. Really encourage what helps us as we think about the resilience implementation strategy, how we take an all hazards approach to prioritization of actions and how we really look forward on the climate change impacts that we'll see as a state.
I want to underscore heat.
Yeah.
Because actually, especially with vulnerable communities, and if you look around the country, heat is in the out years. And, you know, our per year statute, we're going to be looking at, you know, a long-term look at these costs. And what are the cost drivers? And the impacts of heat on human health are probably the highest concern.
Yeah, I would just posit, we were, I think, all very surprised to see that LIHEAP, when they had shut down the funding for LIHEAP, or not shut, I don't even know what it was that they did, but we weren't getting the money. So whatever it was, LIHEAP wasn't coming. We didn't feel a ton of pressure at that time in the summer as a state. But when you looked at our fellow states in high heat areas, they used LIHEAP for air conditioning. So it was pretty shocking to think that they were just turning the thermostat up on hundreds of thousands of people who are going to be unable to afford it. So, and we need to have some vulnerabilities built into those funding sources as well.
And our children in their full schools.
That's
And what do we need to be thinking about now as the subject of school reform and construction is probably pretty big on their minds right now, and we don't have air-conditioned schools, and,
Correction facilities.
Oh, correction facilities.
correct.
Yes, yeah. You've got the chair of, institutions behind you,
Right.
Senator Harrison, so
We
certainly.
had a talk, but not about this.
No, and actually, 3 years ago in corrections, we started looking at,
I hadn't
air conditioning because it's a terrible situation.
I
And
think
we
senior
still aren't
living,
there. We aren't where we need to be.
nursing homes and senior living, I think there is some planning in that area, but I'm not
There's,
corrections.
And way to go being resilient and getting your sides up. That is.
nothing like how.
Yay. Perseverance.
Solid HDMI plug in the city today.
Yeah.
Very hard. You can take forward 2 slides, Jordan. I will say, as we look at sort of the climate hazards that Vermont experiences, as we were developing the resilience implementation strategy and really thinking about how do we define resilience and how do we use that to then assess the work of state government and really assess where we might see the impacts of climate change moving forward. We looked across various hazards, looked across sort of the programs and systems that state government has in place, and really acknowledged that kind of these myriad impacts and challenges help us really think about interconnected systems, ecological resilience, social resilience, and economic systems that help us anticipate, adapt, withstand, respond, and thrive in the face of current and future climate conditions. So we're really looking at kind of 3 complementary systems that form the basis for thriving communities where ecosystems, economies, and our societies can really thrive in the face of changing climate conditions and help reinforce one another.
And that photo you talked about, that is
There you are.
stark.
Yeah.
That is like really stark.
Because when you're in it, you don't see what you're not seeing.
Yeah.
Although you do see the red sun in the sky, pretty dramatic. So basing off of that definition of climate resilience, for the resilience implementation strategy, we organized recommendations in the strategy across 6 core buckets that you'll see up on the slide here. We developed these kind of 6 core buckets based on conversations with Vermonters about climate resilience. We held community gatherings around the state, met Vermonters where they were at farmers markets and community center celebrations, but also looked back at conversations and engagement that other partners had done over the last 5 years or so, acknowledging that just with one round of engagement wasn't enough. And there's been a lot of conversations of climate resilience over the last couple of years. And so starting to pull out themes and ideas and areas where we could really build off of that work that's already happened. So we integrate our actions across these 6 core buckets. I'll just walk through at a high level what the general focus of each of them are, but you can really think of them as the high level guiding buckets, and then the more specific actions fall within each. On the left-hand side, community-centric approach is really focused on actions that help us protect our human health and well-being, help us think about how we do planning and really help anticipate and plan for the impacts of climate change, and really includes actions that focus on bringing community-centered approach to our local engagement and statewide engagement strategies and decision-making. Acknowledging that we're really defining resilience as our ability to plan and respond to the impacts of climate change. We have a number of recommendations that focus on our warning systems and fast, effective emergency response, really ensuring that Vermonters are able to anticipate and actively respond to climate-related impacts as they happen. Under economic and environmental sustainability, we're really focused on actions here that support businesses and our natural working lands enterprises in adapting to climate change conditions. Under infrastructure, as Sue was noting, really focused on our roads, bridges, water, wastewater treatment facilities, power lines, culverts, communication services, et cetera. How we build them, how we repair them, and how we really assess them with an eye towards changing climate conditions.
With things like I see we have our ski partners in the room. I think a lot about them when I think about economic impacts and resiliency for
Yeah.
climate change. Would that be the bucket you think about?
Absolutely, yeah, and I can speak a little bit more to some of the work we're moving forward with priority actions in this area, really helping businesses think about planning for climate change, partnering with organizations like BPSR, VOBA, Vermont Afro-Business Alliance, and other partners. So yes, but ski industry, sort of thinking forward to that.
Yeah. Oh, Maple.
Under nature-based solutions, we're focused not only on actions that really look at nature-based solutions as a strategy that helps us buffer our communities from the impacts of climate change, but also how we support and safeguard Vermont's ecosystems of biodiversity, knowing that they are also feeling the impacts and their actions we can take to support them. Yeah, go ahead.
Like as simple as a good beaver policy would be part of a natural
Yeah,
nature
we did
based.
get a lot of comments about beavers.
Yeah.
A lot of interest, yes.
It's a fan favorite of the House Environmental Committee, as I understand.
Our fan favorite as well. And then the last system, acknowledging again that the focus of the strategy was really looking at the work across state government, government systems, really looks at tying all the previous 5 components together. Is really the often invisible but nuts and bolts of how we get work done, the funding, the coordination that happens within state government, technical assistance, and how we really help support that with an eye towards climate adaptation. So again, together these kind of sort of, these do form the framework to address those 3 systems, physical, ecological, and social and economic, and really help us think about how we prioritize and look at actions that we can take to address infrastructure resilience from our roads and bridges to communications networks, community well-being, et cetera. Next slide, please.
The dams, my committee passed a bill, environment, on a study, a dam study. But I was very surprised to hear how many dams we have in Vermont that are what they call high hazard. And that's not that they're not being looked at,
Right.
but it means that if they fail, then 1,000 people could be killed. And I'm just wondering if you are involved in that at all.
So it's a great question, and I think a good example for me to sort of frame up how this strategy kind of complements other work. There was a lot of focus on dams in the Flood Safety Act that had passed prior, and so not trying to sort of duplicate that and really build off of that good work that went into that. That being said, to sort of your point around how do we really prepare communities, prepare response partners or utilities, dam operators for acknowledging that we're going to see changes in precipitation patterns, there is a key recommendation in the strategy to really support and enhance what already happens, but around dam safety tabletop exercises. So getting folks together in a room, really talking about our response approach to, potential dam failure, kind of gaming that out so that we're better prepared. So there was a focus of that in the strategy, but then also really complementing the work and really what we're seeing happening moving forward, Flood Safety Act.
And I think it's a hugely important point because it was of something like 130 initiatives. Dam preparedness was the one of 5, I think, that the secretary and the treasurer chose to highlight. It's a super high priority, even just to do the preparedness exercises, because I'm from Waterbury and in 2011, 2023, 2024, Middlesex dam really came in close in thousands, tens of thousands. And I think we aren't prepared. There needs to be an analysis of what needs to be done, but how do the humans preparing for what could happen get ready? And that's really what this is about, because we aren't right.
Wendy, Senator Harrison has a
I just
question.
want to add to this, but one thing, we used to have more robust emergency management and communications systems when Yankee
Mhm.
funded them, but they're much dissipated. So that's something that we really need to talk about, because it's worse than it used to be.
Yeah, I used to work with Vermont Emergency
Oh,
Management,
good.
and we
Okay.
hear often about, when Vermont Yankee was active and sort of the funding that the preparedness allowed and paid for emergency management directors in the communities surrounding Yankee, sort of supported a lot of the emergency preparedness activities, and when that was commissioned, that funding went away, and so.
All the training and
Tabletops.
and they actually can't talk to each other anymore either. They use their cell phones because we don't have good radio systems.
Wow. Yep. Yeah, it's a good point.
This is exactly what I was here.
Yeah. So, to sort of craft the priority actions that exist within the resilience implementation strategy, again, we sort of did broad engagement. We did a really detailed assessment and inventory of work that happens across state government that has a nexus to climate resilience. So our office reached out to partners, again, across state government, saying, what is it that you do that has an impact on climate resilience? It could be a technical assistance program you offer, it could be a grant, it could be a particular policy you help implement or regulation. What is that? Tell us about it. Tell us how it intersects with climate resilience. And we built that into a pretty comprehensive, I won't say fully, but pretty comprehensive inventory of work from across 30 different state organizations You can access it on our website. There's a pretty great database that you can filter by different options, different focus areas, what that kind of tool is that the state partner uses to help implement that particular thing, how it intersects with climate resilience. In some cases, in many cases, there's a lot of work that happens that maybe doesn't explicitly call out climate resilience, doesn't call out resilience as a key goal, but still does help us kind of enhance, again, our ability to respond to, adapt to kind of stressors and natural disasters in this.
And in your email invite to this meeting, the link is there to see this whole thing. And I apologize, the senators are going to have to leave because we have our photo. I know. And I leave it in your capable hands.
The House members, they don't get to photograph.
I don't know what you got.
No, we've already had it. We've already had it. We had it early on.
Let me get outside.
We had new people come in this. Oh, go ahead.
Is the slide deck going to be available for them?
Well, now Jordan has it, so happy to share it too. That's easier. But yes, sure. So we took that inventory, we held engaged conversations across this couple of months, and then culminated in a workshop where we had 113 people from different partner organizations, state organizations come together, where we really assessed that, all right, here's this inventory we've done. We sort of assessed what state government does through that inventory. We kind of, before that workshop, asked a number of questions about where might there be gaps, where might there be climate hazards that we don't address as much, where there are opportunities to kind of think about enhancing through our existing work across state government, sort of enhance how we deliver resilience. And so we asked some high-level questions and then got to some really detailed questions across a series of breakout groups and workshops, sort of sub-workshops that day. From that workshop, we can go to the next slide, Jordan. We were culminated in 126 priority actions. We had, I should say, should have said at the beginning of this, a steering committee made up of representatives from across state government that were really closely involved with our office and with the Treasurer's office in developing the resilience implementation strategy. And we worked together to identify those concrete specific actions that were sort of brainstormed at the workshop and then prioritize them based on practicability, impact, and then timing of resilience benefits. Based on that question of timing and sort of readiness for implementation, we broke out the 126 priority actions into two buckets. So the first bucket we called tier 1 actions. These are high urgency and high readiness for implementation. And then tier 2 actions are important, still prioritized, but maybe need a little bit more coordination or planning to be ready for implementation. And I will say actions are quite specific. They're really measurable steps that we can take. They tend to tie to sort of one program or one specific area of focus. So we can be really strategic and really specific about sort of the steps that were prioritized through the resilience strategy.
And I do want to mention, I've got the legislation here, which specifically you direct the agency to develop, adopt, implement, and update the strategy that will identify and prioritize. So that's always the hardest part. Climate change adaptation projects. It's very much implementing the vision.
We can go to the next
It's
slide.
easy. 126 actions.
Great, thanks, Sue. And we took those actions, and really what the great partnership with the Treasurer's Office was to really think about not only how do we prioritize actions, how do we develop sort of a list of things that we would like to do, how can we ensure that they nest and connect with work that's already happening and are duplicative of actions that are already moving forward, but also how do we start to assess what the cost might be with implementation of some of those actions. And this really helps us think more specifically about prioritization, really help frame up need, but also help frame up benefit of investing in these particular actions. So the Treasurer's Office really led this effort. I'll speak for Sue, but sort of with the Treasurer's Office role in taking this on. The Treasurer's Office looked at those priority actions, those 126 actions that have been identified, and grouped them into various buckets that help them really think about how to assess estimated implementation costs with them. They looked at actions that explicitly called for funding or financing source, actions that were really focused on immediate disaster recovery, and then those that really focused on evaluation of risk and high value mitigation plans. From that, they were able to assess costs, working with partners from across state government, checking in with them about previous costs and what it would take to scale up for 48 actions. So just a subset of some of the actions that were prioritized, but helps us paint a good picture of estimated implementation costs for some of this work. If you go on our website, and it sounds like it was linked in the invitation for this, so that's great. We have a really, what I hope is user-friendly way where you can explore the actions and actually see for those that we were able to assess costs with them, estimated costs, you can see the number associated with that action. It's broken out either by estimated one-time costs or ongoing needs, looked at in 2025 dollars with a 2.5% inflation adjustment over a 30-year time horizon. And you'll see the kind of numbers on the right-hand side of the slide here, estimated one-time need for implementing, again, just a subset of these actions, 270 million, and then 95 million in one-time, or excuse me, in 2025 dollars, looking over a 30-year annual time horizon.
That's an aggregate.
Yep, this is an aggregate of those actions that were assessed, yeah.
So do you have any, maybe you're getting to it, source for the funding?
So
Have there been any requests in, for example, in this year's budget?
not in this year's budget.
Okay,
Not in this year's budget. There are, however, recommendations to look at different types of funding sources that are included in the resilience implementation strategy. So not only sort of identifying where there are particular programs that maybe have had one-time funds over the last couple of years. One of those priorities is really looking at the Flood Resilient Communities Fund. Folks are familiar with it. It's run through Vermont Emergency Management and really provides us a place to do climate adaptation that's not funded by FEMA. And looks at how can we sort of fund that on an ongoing basis. None of that was included in the budget this year, but there are recommendations in the actions that will, and I'll kind of get to this at the end. We don't see this as sort of just a one-time plan. We plan to revisit it every 2 years to really assess when there is capacity in the budget and sort of need and priorities. We can kind of pull up specific actions that really align with that need on a 2-year basis. And then every 4 years, we'll sort of reassess the entire set of actions to think about how we adjust moving forward. So really do see this as a way to help us frame up a need, help us identify some places where we might need specific funding or financing, and then use that year over year. Yep.
How is this tied to the court case? Because it seems like two things. One is, you know, if we prevail and force those to have some responsibility to help pay for this, that we'd have a plan already. And two, this tells us how much it's gonna take to get ready as part of the argument with the court case.
So I can say that you all presuppose in your wise bill.
I will say this cost assessment is completely separate and different from the work that the treasurer's office is moving forward. So they shouldn't be taken together. It's really a separate work. But as Sue said, the resilience implementation strategy is identified in the Climate Superfund Act as one of the places where funds from the Climate Superfund program could be used to fund adaptation projects. You all also identified the State Hazard Mitigation Plan and the Community Resilience and Disaster Mitigation Grant Program as other places where those funds could be utilized.
Okay.
But you're right, it helps us really frame up and think about need and helps us, I think, better hit the ground running when and if funding is available.
Thank you.
Is resilience and adaptation, do they have the same name?
Good question. It's slightly different. So the way I think of it is resilience is really a state that we are in. We become more resilient by actions that we take. Resilience is our ability, again, to be able to be more prepared, respond more quickly, to be able to sort of thrive in the face of climate conditions. So we want to sort of work towards being more resilient. Adaptation to me are those specific steps that we take to really mitigate the physical harm, the financial harm that climate change would have on us. So you can sort of think of adaptation as the steps we might take to become more resilient.
Like a larger culvert.
Sorry,
Larger culvert.
like the larger culvert would be an
Yeah,
adaptation action. Exactly. Yeah, good question.
I want to just interrupt and then go to you. Two things, you know, this is an aggregate state level response, but I know a lot of towns, obviously those that have been so directly impacted are beginning and have in their town budgets begun to think about putting aside funds. And I think generally towns think about, we got to be ready for the big one and to be able to jump in, but some of these resilience activities should be something that towns consider as well, because there might be things that can happen locally now that may not be on the minds. We're mostly like, oh, how do we go and muck out a home? But anyway, I just want to mention that. And then the other, I forgot the other thing, that question of adaptation and the way that the legislature defined adaptation in this statute, I just want to say is really helpful and important and broad. And I'm not gonna say more than that, but there's a lot to it. It's a loaded question. Sorry, go ahead.
Oh, I was just wondering, I don't remember the details in the bill as far as backfilling investments we made now and post I read. Whether monies could be kind of,
Yeah.
no refunding. Okay, so it's-
Absolutely not, because that would be a duplication of federal benefits. So money for which the state has been reimbursed or individuals would likely not. And per this statute, funding can be looking forward and not back.
all forward looking back.
How we assess costs looks back and forward, projects, but how you define the use of the funds is forward.
As is there a date?
Well, yes,
I'm forgetting.
I have to, I think to be accurate, I need to, but it's from now. Essentially, the so-called covered period of looking back was from 1995 to 2024, and looking forward is. Got it.
I want to add in terms of municipal work, after Irene, as you remember, there was the VERI study, the Vermont Economic Resiliency Initiative or
Yep.
whatever it was. And my town of Brattleboro was chosen as one, and they did sort of strategies for future flood prevention. And out of that came a wonderful floodplain that got developed with help from FEMA, and initially VHCB got involved, and then I think the River Conservancy. Anyway, and also there was work done with a senior housing project that had to be taken down. So we now have 2 floodplains in Brattleboro on the Whetstone Brook that will probably protect our downtown in the future.
Absolutely, and those are federal FEMA projects, so FEMA has public assistance and emergency response funds, but it also has something that I think we're referring to called hazard mitigation funds. And the amount of the money that the state, per what FEMA used to be, and we don't know because it's being revised, we think, a percentage of the amount that we had to receive from public assistance then gets plowed into hazard mitigation funding for this very purpose, and that helped with the Whetstone Brook. That was a huge project.
Yeah.
I was involved in that whole thing.
And I'll just share that FEMA released today the NOFO for the Building Resilient and Infrastructure Communities Grant Program.
Oh, that's a good thing.
It's a good thing. $1 billion for application.
I'm gonna get big.
Okay, so we can go to the next slide. I'm gonna highlight just a quick handful of high priority actions and sort of group these sort of by the way that we think about the mechanism that they use to help build resilience. Again, sort of reflect how we assessed state government work. And so just wanted to highlight a handful. And these are all most actions that are moving forward in some capacity. So I wanted to sort of share with you all work that is moving forward related to the resilience implementation strategy. The first is, and these are sort of slightly cut down versions of the actions, but really focused on a partnership between the Agency of Natural Resources, Department of Environmental Conservation, DFR, Department of Financial Regulation, to really think about how do we develop tools and resources to help folks better understand the importance and sort of the options as it relates to flood insurance and flood risk. And we'll just flag for folks, Flood Safety Awareness Week is March 8th to March 14th. There's going to be a series of talks and there are resources available. And encourage folks to take a look at that, some of which will really focus on flood insurance and how people can learn about it, learn about risk and access what's available.
So is that March or May?
March 8th to the 14th.
But that works. We're in April.
Sorry, April.
We're at March 26th today.
No, okay. I have the wrong month. I'll double check the month. That's a good flag. We are in fact past those dates.
Almost in April.
Getting my dates wrong, but I'll double check and share with you. There was a great press release went out for that. And then the other that I'll highlight here, there's been some discussion about kind of emergency alert systems and sort of how we better communicate alerts when things are happening. And so there was a lot of kind of interest and discussion around really thinking how we use VT Alert, sort of this emergency messaging system that is made available through Vermont Emergency Management. Municipalities can access it, other partners can access it, but really think about a targeted outreach campaign to those underserved populations in Vermont that maybe need some additional support or additional resources to understand how to use VT Alert and how to have it support their understanding of pending hazards. Next slide, please. And then the other bucket I wanted to share was actions that are really related to tools and technical assistance. A number of these are being moved forward with support from the Climate Action Office in coordination with other partners. Sorry, I forgot there was animation, so you can quick. The first is we are working with partners at the Agency of Agriculture and American Farmland Trust to build off of a pilot that's already moving forward and support a self-evaluation tool for the agricultural community, really focused on climate resilience and really having it be used to support farmers' understanding and being able to take action on climate adaptation, but also having it help support our planning and kind of future consideration of investments and technical assistance needs. Next slide, please. We are also working and are currently piloting a capital program climate guide for municipalities, really helping municipalities, one, think about how they build and develop capital improvement plans or capital programs, and then also incorporate climate considerations into those, thinking about, placement schedules for upsizing your culverts, and how you sort of build that into your capital program. Next slide, please. And then one that I've included in here to really highlight some coordination that's happening across state governments. We are supporting an effort in partnership with a couple of different agencies to really think about how we pull together and better understand where hydraulic mapping has taken place in the state and display that on some sort of pretty basic platform. Help us as partners, as legislators, really understand where mapping has happened, so we can better build off of that and be more efficient as we talk about flooding assessments and where we want to prioritize investment moving forward. So that's an exciting project too, in partnership with BCGI and EPC and AOT and others. Next slide, please. So my last slide here, just to wrap up, I noted some of this earlier, but in terms of implementation, we as the Climate Action Office, I should have said this at the top, but we sit within the Secretary's Office of the Agency of Natural Resources. We are supported and sort of advised by an interagency advisory board of partners from across state government, and we really help support and bring capacity to climate-related work, inclusive of both greenhouse gas reduction and building resilience across state government. So we're helping to support early implementation of some actions, either through direct work from our office or supporting partners from other agencies. And then, as I said earlier, this resilience implementation strategy is really intended to be a living document. With those specific actions, we anticipate priorities changing year over year, funding becoming available for different initiatives, and have sort of wrote into it our intent with the Treasurer's Office to revisit those priorities every 2 years to sort of assess need, assess priority hazards and opportunities that are available. And then every 4 years or so, do kind of a bigger overhaul and assessment of how we can really continue to build out the work that we're doing and create a prioritized list of needs.
I want to just underscore the importance of the interagency collaboration. It's, as you understand in your committees of jurisdiction, you never get to see the whole picture. And in these instances, and I really applaud Marian and her colleagues for having that approach, because I know after Irene we did that, and it's rare and it's essential. Because if we're not on the same page with who's doing what map or what communication system, it all breaks down. But so it's really been great work. Sorry, I interrupted.
No, I was gonna just ask, I assume as part of all this, as you look at, these strategies, and if we implement these strategies, here are the long-term savings that come out of it. So I assume that gets sort of closed in too as part of the prioritization yeah.
Yeah, there's a lot of interesting ideas that made their way into actions in the strategy to really look at kind of how we better codify the long-term savings and investment in resilience. I will point to, and spoke of this at a different conference last week, there's been a lot of national studies that have looked at sort of the benefits of investing in climate resilience. I could rattle you off a bunch of numbers and stats, but some really interesting work done by Chamber of Commerce and other partners.
The Pew Foundation, I think.
Pew has done some great research.
Yeah.
And, I think it's both, again, the numbers vary, every dollar invested yields $13 in savings. Every dollar not invested is $33 lost of economic activity. I mean, there's all sorts of numbers that really look across hazards and across the national landscape. So, would be a little bit different in Vermont. But we also know that investing in adaptation is building healthy communities, is encouraging social cohesion and connection, is helping kind of make our natural spaces nicer for us to enjoy and for our ecosystems. And so also been a lot of national research and work looking at, even if we invest in climate adaptation, we feel those benefits even if we're not hit by a disaster, right? Like it's sort of it's a win-win process. So can rattle off those numbers, but it's really beneficial. Thank you.
I want to thank you both for your work and for coming and talking to us, and we will keep paying attention. to climate.
It's always nice to leave the climate caucus meeting with a good feeling.
Yeah.
So this is good.
Anyway, thank you.
It's really great.